Okay, thank you, Maude, and welcome everyone. Welcome back to those of you that have been joining us on previous editions. The saga continues, ladies and gentlemen. There have been quite a few developments since the last time that we met last week. This is a special edition this week because we have a guest. We have Tyler Hokama, who is of the SOU Small Business Development Center, which is a partnership between the state of Oregon, Southern Oregon University, and the SBA. So he will be on hand during the second half of today's presentation to take Q&A with all the participants on this edition. So next slide, a little bit about the Caputo Group. We offer solutions and support services in the areas of human resources, compliance, liability, payroll, and benefits so that you can focus on what you're passionate about. You can focus on your craft. So we bring your small business, big business expertise. And we also offer activities like this webinar to help keep everyone informed on the developments that are affecting their lives and their livelihoods. So on the next slide, we'll just very briefly go through this timeline again. Like I said, it's an ongoing saga. Secretary Mnuchin, the Secretary of the Treasury, he likened it to a baseball game, saying that there was going to be numerous innings to it. Phase 1 passed on March 6th, and that appropriated $8.3 billion for the vaccine development and for the administrative structure of the crisis. Phase 2 passed on March 18th, and that was the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, the FFCRA, and that set out the emergency paid sick leave, the paid family medical leave, the expanded unemployment, and also food assistance. And then on the 27th of March, the CARES Act passed. That was phase 3. And that was the piece of legislation that brought forth the Paycheck Protection Program loans, the EIDLs, the Economic Injury Disaster loans. It authorized direct payments to citizens, and it also introduced the employer tax credits as ways of the employers being able to be compensated for their providing of paid sick leave to their employees. Okay, so on our next slide, CARES Act, just at a glance, this is what we talked about last week, that there were 3 ways that your business could get relief funding from the government to help you and your business and your employees through this COVID-19 crisis. One of them was the Paycheck Protection Program, which is a very popular program. The IRS employer tax credits, we gave you the breakdown of how you can access those along with all of the links. And then the economic injury disaster loans. So the Paycheck Protection Program, on the next slide, the idea of that was that it was fully forgivable if 75% is used for payroll or for quick rehire, and that small businesses, sole proprietorships, and independent contractors were eligible. You would apply through an existing SBA 7A lender, and as of last week, it was quickly running out of funds. And as of today, ladies and gentlemen, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but apparently it has also run out of funds. So that is a pretty sobering update on this program. If we turn to the next slide, we will see, again, just the economic injury disaster loans. last week on Thursday, we talked about the economic injury disaster loans, the EIDLs, and how to access them. Then I went for my daily update on Friday morning, and I saw that it was that it had been capped at $15,000 per applicant. So it went down from $2 million to $15,000. The $10,000 fully forgivable emergency cash infusion option, there was more guidance that came out on that too last week, saying that it was limited to $1,000 per employee, up to 10 employees. And then as of yesterday, the program itself was suspended, awaiting further appropriations.
And I just have one quick comment. This is Tyler Hokama speaking from the SBDC. So some of the EIDL loans themselves, it may depend on when you applied. I've had a client who was actually approved for $200,000 for that program. So your results may vary just depending on when you applied and the nature of your business.
Yeah, thank you, Tyler. I remember you and I talked about that yesterday. Yeah, so hopefully people who applied before a certain date are still going to be able to get their loans. So on the next slide, just to reiterate, the employer tax credits, those are for sick and family leave credits and employee retention credits. We did talk about this last week. On the next slide, you have the tax credit form 7200, which you can download. This is an updated FAQ on employer tax credits as well, that particular link. And then on the next slide, last week I had given you some pre-made forms by the Pierce Atwood law firm. Apparently, the links that I gave to those forms, apparently they expired or something else happened. So what I've done to make those forms available for everyone is I've just converted them into JPEG, and I have put them on my Sophia Blanton with the Caputo group Facebook page that you can just visit by hitting that link there, or you can just pop that into Facebook. Go there, give it a like. I'm definitely collating and curating a lot of resources on that page too, and up to the minute information. So you can access those there. They are pinned to the top of the page and available for you. So just to give a brief legislative update on the next slide, phase 4 is underway. And like I said, I am just the messenger here. So I visit sites like The Hill and Roll Call. I visit nationallawreview.com on a daily basis to keep up with this quickly unfolding drama here. So here is the latest as of yesterday. Congress is going to be in recess until May 4th. They were due to reconvene on April 20th, but are not going to do that because they are observing social distancing. And they're observing the implementation of the CARES Act as it's unfolding, and they're trying to take stock of the actual coronavirus curve before determining the next steps. The funding is running out. The Department of the Treasury has said that $70 billion in federal loans have already been processed for more than 200 small businesses. But the truth of it is that the funds have run out. So just as a way of keeping you informed about what's on the table in Congress, both Tyler and I know that things, information that we give you is provisory. It can change at any moment. But just to let you know that the Republican priorities right now, have to do with a very swift addition of an additional $250 billion into the CARES Act to shore up the Paycheck Protection Program loans. So Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has stated that that is something that he would like to see happen by unanimous consent so that that can be pushed through as quickly as possible because of the incredible demand that has come in for these loans. The Democratic priorities are a $250 billion appropriation that they would like to see, including things like hazard pay for essential workers and better funding for hospitals. $125 billion of that would be earmarked towards smaller financial institutions that can help businesses who don't have an established 7A lender relationship, because that's one of the criticisms that has come back of the Paycheck Protection Program loans, that businesses who don't have an already established relationship with some of these lenders were getting put down to the bottom of the pile and not being able to access that. So that is a Democratic priority, and they have also said that they would like to see 60 million of that 125 billion go towards replenishing the EIDLs, the economic injury disaster loans. And that was from, I got that from Roll Call magazine on 4/13. So here again, that is a resource that you can follow as well. I would like to move on to the next slide here. Okay, so I think, you know, it's all fine and good for us to sit back and receive information, but it's also important for every single one of us to stay within the information stream and to be caught up on what the priorities are and what the changing priorities are. And so I would like to very strongly encourage everyone who is attending this webinar today to add your voice to the mix and to participate. The small business majority is a very, very active organization that advocates for small businesses. They also put out webinars, and they also have a small business COVID-19 economic impact survey that you yourself can complete, and then they will funnel that back through to Washington through their channels, because I think it's time for the federal government to start hearing from us. Oregon Senator Ron Wyden, down there at the bottom, is going to be holding a virtual town hall tomorrow, Friday. It starts at 10:30 in the morning, and it's streaming live on Facebook. And he's going to be answering a lot of these types of questions from Oregonians about the state of the program. And certainly one of the questions that I would like to hear answered is if Mitch McConnell is going to use the emergency 24-hour callback rule to get Congress back into session and to push some of this legislature through, because I think we can all agree that we can't wait until May 4th for these things to be sorted out. So please, if you can, make it to Senator Wyden's virtual town hall. I've also included the website of Oregon Senator Jeff Merkley, because it's time for us to start writing our representatives. It's time for all of us to get involved. And I encourage those of you like Wilma that have joined us from out of state, please do the same in your respective states. Find out who your congresspeople are, who your senators are, and add your voice to this process, because these are the processes that are affecting our lives and our livelihoods. and we cannot afford to not be heard at this crucial time. So I would like to now introduce to you Tyler Hokama. Like I said, he's at the SOU Small Business Development Center. He's on the next slide here. That's the SBDC. It's a partnership between the state of Oregon, Southern Oregon University, and the SBA. And he very graciously agreed to interface with me about the type of information that we put out on a weekly basis through these webinars, and he made himself available today to talk to us and to take Q&A. So welcome, Tyler.
Thank you. Yeah, I haven't seen too many questions come through via chat, so if there are people who have questions on the different programs that want to ask it verbally, I can answer them that way as well. Or perhaps you have been really well informed from this team. Maybe there aren't that many questions out there.
Just in case people are wondering, you are more than welcome to unmute yourself. You can just find in the lower left-hand corner should be a little mic, and you're more than welcome to click that if you'd like to verbally ask a question.
You know, Tyler, you know, I could get the ball rolling with that. One of the questions that has come through is, if an employee is furloughed and their employer doesn't offer to keep their health care in place, what happens to employees like that? Would you have a line on information like that? It all seems kind of nebulous. I've done some research on it. But what would be your guess on that? Do you think the expansion to the Affordable Care Act would cover people like that, or what is your hit on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's so case dependent, right? So depending on the employee, how much they're getting paid, what their income is, they may be eligible for a number of different levels of types of medical care, right? So like in Oregon, I don't know if all of your clients are in Oregon, but they may be eligible for OHP. They may be eligible for filing on the exchange for a private plan under the Affordable Care Act. So those are certainly options, but it's so dependent on the worker themselves.
Thank you.
Yeah, and what we usually focus on at the Small Business Development Center is more on the businesses and helping business owners. We don't focus as much on, you know, what the employees can do. We obviously have some insights on things, but we generally focus our counsel on business owners and helping them not just with navigating crises like COVID-19, but in getting established, growing, sometimes selling their business or buying a business. So we kind of focus more on the business owner side of things.
Tyler, we have a question about clarifying. You in chat had said, there was a question in chat about the SBA loans on Monday saying the EIDL grants were reduced from 100K per business to 1K per employee. What gives? And then you had answered that. I think they had a follow-up question is, do you mean the PPP loan can be more? And the person who asked that, if you are, I think I may have botched your question, so if you want to fix it for me, please unmute yourself. Or
I didn't see that question in there.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw the first one on the EIDL. I didn't see the one on the PPP.
It came, yeah. Yes, I will send that question to you.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, maybe
yeah,
I'm the one who asked that question. Maybe I can clarify that.
Please.
So, Tyler, you replied that the advance was always up to 10K, and due to overwhelming demand, it is providing $1,000 per employee for the loan advance portion. And then you wrote the loan itself can still be for more. Which loan are you referring to?
So yes, so for the EIDL, so I was referring to just the EIDL. So the EIDL, it's an economic injury disaster loan, right? So the loan can be $15,000, for example, right? The loan advance, the portion that is forgivable, if you will, that's based on number of employees you have. So it's possible to get, for example, a 1K loan advance, but a 15K loan under the EIDL, as an example.
So that's different than the PPP.
Yes.
It is. The PPP, your eligible amount is basically 2.5 months of your annual payroll. And the forgivable amount, I think Sophia reviewed it earlier, can be up to 8 weeks of payroll, as long as that is at least 75% of the overall forgiveness amount, which means that you could also include some other business expenses like rent and utilities, as an example.
Right. And as long as it's thoroughly.
Right, although that's very different. There's no way to put rent on the PPP application because I've already done that. So they only ask you for the numbers of employees.
Yeah, so I think, this is a good question, because one of the confusion points about the payment protection plan is the difference between the eligible loan amount and the amount that can be forgiven. The eligible loan amount is based purely on the payroll calculation. The forgiveness amount can cover expenses that are not just payroll costs. So that's kind of like the phase 2, if you will, of your PPP process. You will be approved, you can be approved for an amount that is based on payroll costs, but how you actually can get forgiveness, 25% can be on other expenses that are not payroll related, like rent and utilities. So that's when it comes into play, is when you have expenses after you've taken the PPP loan that you may be able to be forgiven for, as long as it's limited to 25% of the total amount.
So the PPP loan then can be increased?
Okay, so the PPP amount, the loan amount, is going to be based on your payroll costs. So
That's
typically,
correct.
yeah, so typically they'll look at what is your 1-year run rate, for example. They'll say, what is the 1 year of total salary costs? That times 2.5 months of that annual amount is what your eligible PPP loan amount will be for. Of that amount, the amount that
Correct.
can be given, yeah, of that amount that you're given, the loan amount that you're given, the amount that can be forgiven is going to be based on your actual spend, and did you retain employees, FTEs, and what your eligible expenses are. So there's kind of 2 calculations. One's simpler than the other.
So the second calculation is after the fact, in other words.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Because what they will look at is your actual expenses, and they will look at, did you hire people back during that 8-week time frame based on FTEs and salary, etc.
Okay, thank you.
Tyler, I have another question, and this is, and forgive me if it's a bit, don't quite know what I'm trying to ask, so hopefully you can help guide me. I am working with a new business that does not have a history to fall back on of employment. However, they've got maybe less than a month worth of employment history, except for there is an owner who was pulling, I think they were pulling owner draws for about a year. In that instance, are they eligible for any of this help?
So I didn't so sorry, Maude, if you could review the scenario again. So like first let's start. What type of business? Are they a sole proprietor? Are they a individual? Are they an independent contractor? Like, what's the type of business?
They're an LLC.
Okay.
Did you need the industry as well? They're a brewery.
It probably doesn't matter, but always more context is better. So happy to hear.
So they're a very new business. The owner has been working for this business by himself, using an owner's draw to pay himself for at least a year, maybe 3 years. I don't have the detail on that. within a few weeks before the shutdown of restaurants and bars, they had just opened up their retail space. So just terrible timing for them.
Right.
With that, they don't have a history of employment to provide to a bank. And they were wondering, what do they do? Are they eligible for any of these programs?
So yeah, so I can clarify a few things. So the short answer is probably not, right? Because what these programs will, especially PPP, right, will look at if you don't have employees. It sounds like maybe they didn't have employees. That's really what it's based on. If he's an LLC with no employees, under the latest interim final guidelines that was given from Treasury, a business could take what their net income from their Schedule C was last year. But if this business just opened, they're not going to have that. So there's no evidence to show what their income was. You mentioned, Maude, owner draw. Owner draw is a pure cash transaction, so that's not considered under any of these programs wage, income, or salary or anything like that. It really has to be profit.
Yeah. So with that, this particular business, they have, they are currently paying rent. They have contracts. They're in a sticky situation. Would you recommend they go after traditional loans? Do you have any guidance on a direction?
So traditional loans, from my experience and affiliation with banks, is going to be quite difficult because they will always look for 2 years of business history, ideally profitably, et cetera. Many of them don't lend to restaurants, just given the margins in the industry. So that's going to be a difficult path to go for. I guess like one consideration would be if they have collateral. There may be some lenders that will look at the collateral to secure a loan, but now you're not looking at SBA type programs. So interest rates might be higher. It's going to have to be, lenders that are willing to take a little bit more risk, and there are some of them out there. Yeah, traditional lending is going to be more challenging. I think it'd be tough to get that with no history.
Yeah.
If they have collateral, they might have a shot at finding a lender. Aside from that, you're looking at equity partners who believe in the owner the best. That's another option. I would certainly, during this time, negotiate all of your accounts payable to see if you can be put on deferral. If they just signed a lease, a consideration, I think you said it's a restaurant owner, a consideration could be, hey, look, we have no revenues. We're happy to tack on months at the end of the lease so that you'll still get the same flow of payments, right? But if there's no money coming in, I think a lot of landlords are willing to negotiate and work with tenants because it's not great to have a whole bunch of out of business tenants in your properties.
Thank you, Tyler. I think we're all in tricky situations and they just get more complicated. Thank you so much for your information.
Yeah. I mean, this is not the best time to try to find rabbits out of hats and silver bullets, but you can still take some clever actions, and sometimes a collection of them together can let you survive, right? So, and that's the name of the game right now is, can I buy my business 2, 3, 4 months of time to kind of get through the crisis?
Yeah. Does anyone else have any other questions? We have Tyler here. He's got all this great information. Any other questions that have come up for folks?
Hey, Tyler, this is Hunter Caputo. Sophia and I have spoken a couple of times regarding the accessibility of these funds for cannabis-related companies, and specifically companies that deal with THC. So they are dealing with the illegal substance on the federal level, and how is that affecting their potential filing for support? And is there anything that the local government might be doing to help support those businesses that are currently operating?
Sure. Yeah. So any of the federal programs, it's a no-go for any federally illegal businesses. So that one's pretty clear. You can't get an SBA loan if you're doing anything that's not legal at the federal level. At the state level, even programs like Business Oregon, who does have some sources of loan funding that they do, they are limited as well because they kind of share their funding source with federal government, so they also cannot support cannabis or THC related businesses. So at the federal and state levels that I know of, it's pretty limited, right? And I think that's just generally true. Just even using banks can be difficult. So I don't have any great answers for that side. I mean, like in our SBDC, we're not even allowed to advise businesses that are federally illegal.
Just out of curiosity, you may not have any idea on this one, but I was wondering, would the state be able to, in essence, furlough their own tax payments to help support those businesses so they didn't have to at least put that tax money out there while they're trying to struggle and keep their business going? Do you know if they would have that ability, or is that something that they wouldn't even be able to do?
I don't know what the state of Oregon rules and regulations are for what they can do with taxes. So that's not an area of expertise I would have, unfortunately.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah. It's always good to brainstorm, though. You never know.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, one of the things is a lot of these businesses are not making profits right now, so there's not a lot of tax relief they can necessarily provide. Like, I think the big problem right now is more of a cash and revenue crunch more than anything else.
Tyler, one question that has come through a few times is about if these loans can be used to pay off contract labor, or is there a danger of double dipping? Or what is your experience on that? What do you think?
Yeah, so let's kind of break it down by program. So the payment protection plan or program loans is pretty clear. The emphasis and the intent of that entire program is to maintain employees, right? It's payment protection. They're trying to consistently allow employers to keep their employees employed or bring them back, right? So that's really the core of that program. So in terms of eligible expenses, individual contractors, any 1099 MISC employees, if you will, they're not considered employees. They are not considered forgivable expenses. Interestingly enough, if you are an independent contractor, if you are a 1099 MISC employee, you're actually eligible to apply for PPP. So you can actually still get the PPP funds, just not from the person paying you. It's actually for your own business. So that one's fairly clear. The answer is kind of a no-go for contract labor. Under the EIDL, under those loan provisions, there's kind of a fuzzy description of other business expenses that's listed as what can be used under that. So my take on that would be, hey, if it's truly a business obligation that you're using the loan funding for, you are basically attesting that that's what it is. So can you use it for personal expenses? No. But if it's a contractor that's contracted with your business, that's a business expense. So I would view that as perfectly fine under the EIDL based on the guidance that they've given. So it's a little bit different per program on that.
Thank you. That's a really good distinction that you drew there.
Glad I could clarify.
Yeah.
Let's see. I don't see anything else in the chat.
Any other questions that folks have now that we have Tyler here sharing his expertise with us? And again, if you would like to ask a question anonymously, you are absolutely more than welcome to privately message me in chat, which is Maude at the Caputo group. Well, fantastic. Tyler, thank you so much for your time. I don't see any other questions coming through.
All right. Well, I hope I was able to answer the questions that were out there. your satisfaction. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you, Ken.
Absolutely, Tyler. Thank you so much.
It's such a complicated, I can't, I just want to offer some appreciation for how quickly somebody has to become an expert on these very complex new loans out there, you know, within a few days versus often years of becoming an expert. So thank you for doing that. That's not an easy task.
Yeah, actually, I do have one other quick thing to add. And I don't know if this is going to be relevant to your clients on the call, but in case it comes up and in case it might be useful to other clients, I'll just share it. There was a program called the Main Street Lending Program that is being funded and offered through the Federal Reserve to banks. And I don't like the naming of it because I don't think that the candidates that it's designed for really truly is Main Street. But for those businesses who are looking for a loan of at least $1 million, they are offering 4-year loans to businesses, and that's not something that has run out of funds because it hasn't even gone live yet. So that's like in the pipeline and is going to happen. You can borrow up to, I think it's $25 million. So it's probably more of a mid-market type of business as opposed to the small and micro business. But if you do have any clients that have a much larger revenue level, let's just say, and they're looking for $1 million, $5 million, $10 million loan type of thing, that is something that the Fed is going to be backing. So, and they have a lot of resources that don't require congressional approval that they can throw at this COVID-19 problem from a capital market standpoint. That might be something that some clients may wish to look into. You just have to make your future revenues can cover that, because that's a pretty big cash flow amount to cover, right? $1 million loan, 4-year loan is probably $280K a year that you're paying to service the debt. So, but if your revenues can cover that, could be an option.
That was the Main Street Lending Program?
Yeah, yes, that's right.
And it's through the Federal Reserve, right?
Yeah, the Federal Reserve announced it, I want to say a week or two ago, and I don't know if there's been any details that have come out since then, but they basically would provide the backing
Right.
using their own balance sheet to lending banks. So it still would go through standard banks, presumably 7A lending banks, but I don't know for sure on that. They could offer these Main Street lending loans to businesses that way. But it's really targeted more towards what I would say medium-sized businesses. I would never call it Main Street or small. That's just, in my opinion, marketing. But if you do have clients that fit that profile, could be something to look into.
I did see that come through. It was saying that the Fed would purchase these loans and then
That's right.
administer them. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did see that come through. Well, I imagine, Tyler, you are probably fielding a lot of questions, your colleagues as well. I'm very grateful that I was able to make this contact with you, and that you were able to come and talk to us today, because it's reassuring to get advice from someone who's that close to the source. So thank you again. I wonder if there's any more questions for Tyler while we have this professional online with us today to help answer any more questions. Maybe our clients have come to us with questions.
All right, doesn't sound like it, but thanks for the opportunity, and hope I was able to help out some of the team here. Do you have is that the end of today's meeting, or did you have more content that you needed to share today?
Yeah, no, I was just going to announce what's happening next week. And Tyler, you know, I would love it if you could join us each time if you wanted to, if you felt like it. I will definitely keep you on the list. Next week on the next slide, you know, we'll keep updating on the CARES Act progress. Oh, sorry, I think that's our resources page. Oh, there we go. Okay. Thank you. No worries. Next week, we're going to have, again, updates on the progress of the CARES Act and how things are progressing on that. We are going to have a special focus on the cannabis and hemp industries amid COVID-19. Our special guests for next week include Jesse Bonteque, who's the Deputy Director of the Oregon Retailers of Cannabis Association, and Todd Key of the Greenlight Law Group. So we will disseminate that information. And here again, I know we skipped around just a tiny bit, but the page right before that is the resources page. This, again, these will be available to you. They get updated to our website, but here again, some great organizations to get involved with that are actively on the front lines fighting for small businesses and the interests of small business owners with this federal economic stimulus program. The NFIB is there on the front lines, the SBDC, Small Business Majority. Please visit their sites. Please, support them, sign up for their newsletters. They've got up-to-the-minute information. They're out there collecting it all the time as well. The Women's Business Centers are focusing on the relief program for women-owned businesses. There's the SBA Disaster Recovery Loans Facebook page, which is a bustling hive of activity. There's a gentleman called Murray Wenderlund on that page who is giving so much of his time answering people's questions right off of Facebook. He's really going the extra mile. And then again, newspapers like Roll Call, it's a weekly and daily congressional updates website. You can get it right from the horse's mouth there. I definitely visit them practically every day. Roll Call, The Hill, National Law Review. Yeah, so those are all useful resources. And lastly, what we can do for you, the Caputo Group. I think that is 1 or 2 slides up. There you go. So if you're interested in a free consultation about managing the burden of the mandatory employee sick leave, please visit us at that link right there for a free consultation. And the last item there is our website, where you can go to access not only this webinar, but our archives from the past several weeks that we've been doing this. Once again, thank you so much to Tyler for taking your time with us today. Thank you as always to Maude, who's such a great moderator and partner in the project here. And I look forward to seeing everyone again next week.